According to his father's arrangement, Lucas Hale secretly took a job as a server at one of his family's struggling restaurants. Nothing seemed particularly unusual until one night after closing, when he accidentally discovered a female waitress in tears, quietly taking leftover food from the storage room and carefully packing half of it to take home. Something compelled him to follow her in silence. But what he found was not a thief. The truth behind the door of her run-down apartment left him completely stunned. And what happened next will break your heart. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you watching from. We love to hear your thought. The grease-stained apron felt wrong against Lucas Hale's chest. 3 days ago he had been sitting in a leather chair worth more than most people's monthly rent. Italian leather, hand-stitched, the kind of chair that whispered success every time you leaned back in it. Now he was elbow-deep in dishwater at Hale's Kitchen Diner, Branch 19, the worst-performing location in his family's 180-restaurant empire. New guy, those plates are not going to wash themselves. Kenny, the night cook, slammed another stack of dishes onto the counter. The ceramic clattered loud enough to make Lucas flinch. He nodded, kept his head down and said nothing. Nobody here knew that Lucas Hale was actually Lucas Hale, son of Victor Hale, the man who built this empire from a single food truck in 1978. His father had called him into the executive office last Monday, closed the door, sat behind that massive oak desk and spoke in the voice he reserved for firing people. Store 19, his father said, pushing a file across the table. Lucas flipped through the pages. The pages were covered in red numbers. I'll go down there, Victor continued. Undercover, 1 month, no identity, no privileges. Lucas looked up. The objective, he asked. Find the operational flaws, and prove that you can lead without the Hale surname in front of you. This is not a challenge, it is an order, and so is here. Night shift, dishwashing. Lucas the dishwasher, scrubbing dried ketchup off plates at 11:30 at night. His hands were already raw from the industrial soap that stripped away skin like sandpaper. His back ached from standing on concrete floors for 8 hours straight, and his sneakers were soaked through with water that smelled like old grease and forgotten vegetables. The glamorous life of a restaurant heir. The employees here moved like ghosts, tired and irritable and beaten down by something Lucas could not quite name. Nobody smiled unless a customer was watching. The cooks snapped at the servers snapped at the busboys, and the busboys snapped at each other. Everyone complained about everything: the schedule, the pay, the customers, the weather, the government, life itself. Lucas had expected to find the problem quickly. Lazy workers maybe, the kind who showed up late and left early, who did the minimum and collected their paychecks. Or corrupt managers skimming from the register, padding the inventory reports, selling supplies out the back door. Or maybe just incompetence, systems that did not work, training that did not happen, leadership that did not lead. But after 3 days of scrubbing pots and hauling garbage and listening to conversations he was not supposed to hear, Lucas had found nothing obvious, just people working hard for not enough money. Just a system grinding everyone down. Just the slow suffocation of hope that happens when you work 50 hours a week and still cannot afford to fix your car. He thought about his father's words before he left headquarters. Every failing business has a reason. Find it, fix it, or do not bother coming back to this office. Victor Hale did not believe in second chances, and Lucas did not intend to need one. But standing here in the dish pit with his arms aching and his back screaming, he was starting to wonder if the problem was not inside the restaurant at all. Maybe the problem was the people who owned it. Maybe the problem was him. It was 11:47 at night when Lucas carried the last bag of trash through the kitchen's back door. The November air bit at his wet forearms as he heaved the bag into the dumpster, cold enough to see his breath hanging in the air like small ghosts, quiet enough to hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. The alley behind the restaurant was empty and dark except for the single security light mounted above the back door. It cast a yellow circle on the concrete, leaving everything else in shadow. Lucas stood there for a moment, just breathing. 3 days of this work had taught him something the business school professors never mentioned. Physical labor was exhausting in a way that spreadsheets and meetings never were. His whole body hurt. His feet, his back, his hands, even his eyes ached from the fluorescent lights in the kitchen. He turned to go back inside, and that is when he heard it. The soft creak of the storage room door, the one that led from the kitchen to the back hallway. Lucas froze. Strange. Everyone had clocked out, and he had watched them leave. Kenny had grabbed his jacket 20 minutes ago, muttering about a cold beer and a warm bed. The servers had scattered to their cars. Even Mark, the branch manager, had locked up his office and disappeared. Lucas was supposed to be the last one here, but someone else was still inside. He stood there for a moment, uncertain. His first thought was innocent. Someone forgot something. A purse, a phone, keys. His second thought was darker. A thief. Someone breaking in through the back. Someone who knew the restaurant would be empty at this hour. His third thought was the one that made him move. What if it is something else entirely? Lucas was not a hero. He had never been in a fight, never confronted anyone more dangerous than an aggressive board member. But curiosity was stronger than fear. He slipped back inside, moving quietly past the dish station. His wet sneakers made soft sounds on the tile, but he walked carefully, placing each foot with deliberate silence. The kitchen was dark, except for the security light above the prep counter. Stainless steel surfaces gleamed in the dim glow, and the air still smelled like the dinner service. Onions, grease, the ghost of coffee from the pot that had been sitting too long. He could hear something, soft rustling, like paper being unwrapped. Lucas crept forward, his heart beating faster now. Not from fear exactly, but from something else. Anticipation. The sense that he was about to see something important. He reached the industrial shelf that separated the kitchen from the storage area, took a breath, and peered around the corner. A young woman sat hunched on an overturned milk crate in the corner, her back against the wall, knees drawn up, making herself as small as possible. Lucas recognized the uniform immediately, the teal polo shirt that all the servers wore, the black pants, the non-slip shoes, and the name embroidered on the pocket. Emily. He knew her, or at least he knew of her. The quiet one, the server who always seemed to be working no matter what shift Lucas was on. She volunteered for the worst tables, the ones near the kitchen door where the noise was loudest, the ones in the back corner where customers felt ignored and tipped poorly. She never complained when customers were rude, never complained when other servers called in sick and she had to cover their sections, never complained about anything actually. Lucas had noticed her because she was so easy to overlook. She moved through the restaurant like a ghost, efficient, professional, invisible. She had served him coffee twice during his breaks, and both times she had placed the cup on the table without making eye contact, without small talk, without any of the casual friendliness that the other servers performed for tips. Just the coffee, and then she was gone. Now she sat in the storage room, alone, eating. In her hands she held half of a burger, still wrapped in its wax paper, one of the leftovers from the night's service, the kind that would normally go in the trash. She ate quickly, mechanically, her eyes fixed on the ground, not looking around, not watching the door, like someone who had done this many times before. Like someone who knew exactly how much time she had. Lucas watched her finish the burger, but here is what stopped him cold. She did not eat it all. She carefully wrapped the remaining portion back in its paper, folded the edges precisely like she was wrapping a gift, then placed it in a plastic grocery bag beside her. She reached for another container, leftover fries, cold and limp, the kind nobody would order if they knew they had been sitting under the heat lamp for 2 hours. She ate half, wrapped the rest, and added it to the bag. Lucas felt something shift in his chest. This was not someone stealing food for herself. This was someone saving it for someone else. Emily stood up, moving with the careful quiet of someone practiced in not being noticed, someone who knew exactly which floorboards creaked, which doors squeaked, which shadows were deepest. But then she did something that Lucas did not expect. She cleaned, she wiped down the milk crate where she had been sitting, adjusted the supplies on the shelf behind her, made sure everything looked exactly as it had before she entered. She spent 10 minutes cleaning for a 5-minute meal, as if trying to earn the food she was taking, as if trying to convince herself she was not really stealing, as if the guilt was heavier than the hunger. Emily picked up the grocery bag, slipped toward the back exit, opened the door without a sound, and disappeared into the night. The door clicked shut behind her. Lucas stood there in the darkness, his mind racing. He had come here expecting to find lazy workers or corrupt managers. Instead he had found something else entirely. A woman eating alone in a storage room, saving half her food for someone waiting at home, cleaning up her evidence like she was ashamed of needing to survive. Why was she taking food from the trash instead of buying it? Why was she saving half when she was clearly hungry enough to eat it all? Why was she cleaning up afterward, like she owed something for what she took? And the question that kept him awake all night, staring at the ceiling of his rented apartment, replaying the scene over and over, who was waiting for her at home? The next morning, Lucas arrived for his shift 30 minutes early. He had barely slept, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw Emily's hunched figure in the storage room, the careful way she wrapped that food, the guilty efficiency of her cleanup. Something was wrong, and he was going to find out what. He found Mark Reynolds, the branch manager, in his office, a cramped room barely bigger than a closet that smelled like energy drinks and disappointment. The walls were covered with corporate memos and performance charts that nobody ever looked at. Mark was the kind of manager who had stopped caring years ago. He showed up, filed his reports, and went home. Nothing more, nothing less. "Morning, Lucas," Mark said without looking up from his computer. "You are early, do not expect overtime for it." "Just wanted to be prepared," Lucas replied, leaning against the doorframe and trying to sound casual. "Hey, quick question, do we still offer staff meals?" Mark snorted, actually snorted, like the question was amusing. Corporate cut that program 6 months ago, cost-saving measure. Now employees get a 20% discount if they want to buy food. He finally looked up, his eyes flat and disinterested. "Why? Just curious." "Well, do not get any ideas, we have had problems with food theft lately." Mark's expression hardened. "I am installing new cameras next week. High definition, night vision, the works. Anyone caught stealing gets terminated. No exceptions." Lucas felt his jaw tighten but forced his expression to stay neutral. "Got it, thanks." He left the office with his mind churning. 6 months ago, that is when the staff meal program ended. That is probably when Emily started taking food from the trash. And now cameras were coming, which meant Emily's secret was about to be exposed. Over the next several days, Lucas watched Emily work. He positioned himself at the dish station, where he could see the dining room, took his breaks at strategic times, and made excuses to walk through the restaurant during her shifts. He was not proud of it, but he needed to understand. What he saw only deepened the mystery. On Tuesday, Emily arrived 15 minutes before her shift started, and used that time to check the salt shakers, refill the napkin dispensers, and wipe down the menus. Work that nobody asked her to do. Work that nobody paid her for. During the lunch rush, a family of 6 came in with 4 children under the age of 10, loud and demanding, the kind of table that made servers groan and pray for a small tip. Emily took the table without being asked. She spent an hour managing the chaos, bringing extra napkins when the kids spilled their drinks, cutting up food for the toddler when the parents were too busy with the older children, smiling through the noise and the mess and the constant demands. When they left, the father dropped $3 on the table. $3 for an hour of work. Emily pocketed the money without expression, cleaned the table, reset it for the next guests, and moved on. On Wednesday, one of the other servers, a woman named Jessica, who always seemed to be complaining about something, called in sick. Emily was already 6 hours into her shift, but she volunteered to cover Jessica's section. No extra pay, no overtime, just more work piled on top of work she was already doing. "I can handle it," she told Mark when he hesitated. "I do not mind." And she did handle it, somehow, moving between tables like a chess master, never forgetting an order, never losing her patience, never showing how tired she must have been. On Thursday, during the dinner rush, an elderly man at one of Emily's tables started choking on a piece of steak. His wife screamed. The other servers froze. Emily moved. She crossed the dining room in 3 seconds, got behind the man, and performed the Heimlich maneuver like she had done it 100 times before. The steak dislodged, the man coughed and gasped and breathed, and his wife burst into tears. Emily patted the man's shoulder, asked if he was okay, brought him a glass of water, and stayed with the table for 10 minutes making sure he was stable. When she finally walked away, nobody applauded, nobody said thank you, nobody even seemed to notice what had just happened. Life went on, and Emily went back to work. The other employees did not see her the way Lucas did. "She is weird, right?" Danny, one of the other dishwashers, appeared beside Lucas during a slow moment. Always so serious. Never hangs out with anyone, never comes to the staff parties, never joins us for drinks after closing. Maybe she is just focused on work, Lucas offered. Danny shrugged. Or maybe she is just stuck up, thinks she is better than us. Kenny walked by and caught the tail end of the conversation. I have been here 4 years, never seen her smile once. Well, maybe once, but that is it. Something is off with that one. She seems nice enough, Lucas said carefully. Nice. Sure, I guess, if you count doing your job and nothing else as nice, but friendly. Not even close. Never talks about her life, never mentions family, never shares anything personal. Real secretive type. Lucas felt anger flash through him. These people had worked alongside Emily for 2 years, watched her give up her breaks. Watched her take the worst tables. Watched her save a man's life without hesitation, and all they could see was that she did not come to their parties. Maybe she just values her privacy, Lucas said. Kenny shrugged. Maybe, or maybe she is hiding something. He went back to the grill. Lucas watched Emily across the dining room. She was explaining the menu to an elderly couple who could not read the small print, pointing at items, describing flavors, taking her time. Nobody noticed. She was not stuck up, she was surviving. There was a difference. But nobody here cared enough to see it. Lucas learned more details as the days passed. The staff meal program had been cut 6 months ago, a corporate decision made in a boardroom, 1,000 miles away. Someone had looked at a spreadsheet and decided that feeding employees was an unnecessary expense. Before the cut, servers could eat 1 free meal per shift. It was not much, just a burger, or a salad, or some fries, but it was something. Now they got a 20% discount, which meant a $10 meal cost $8, which meant an employee making $14 an hour had to work more than 30 minutes just to pay for lunch. Which meant a lot of employees simply did not eat. Lucas watched them during the slow periods. The servers who drank coffee instead of eating. The cooks who nibbled scraps when they thought no one was looking. The busboys who brought food from home in wrinkled paper bags. Hunger was everywhere. It just wore a uniform and smiled for the customers. And then there were the cameras. Mark mentioned them every day now, reminding the staff, warning them. The installation was scheduled for the weekend. High-definition cameras in the kitchen, in the storage room, in the back hallway. Anyone caught taking food, without paying for it, will be terminated immediately. Mark announced during a staff meeting. This is your only warning. Lucas glanced at Emily during the announcement. She sat in the back corner, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She knew what was coming. The cameras would catch her. Her secret would be exposed, and everything she had been working so hard to protect would come crashing down. Lucas had 72 hours to figure out what to do about it. Lucas sat in his car, outside the restaurant, engine off, headlights dark. It was after midnight, and the building behind him was nothing but shadows and silence. Everyone had gone home hours ago, everyone except Emily. He had watched her clock out at 11, watched her walk out the front door instead of the back. No grocery bag tonight. No detour to the storage room. She was playing it safe now, waiting out the final days before the cameras went live. But Lucas could not let it go. He needed to know more. He needed to understand who she was saving that food for, who was waiting for her, in whatever life she disappeared into every night. So he made a decision that he knew was wrong, and he followed her. He told himself it was part of the investigation, that he needed the full picture before he could make any decisions about her future, or the future of the branch. But the truth nagged at him, like a splinter under his skin. He was doing something wrong. Following an employee without her knowledge, invading her privacy, crossing lines that should not be crossed. He remembered his business school ethics courses, the long discussions about corporate responsibility, the case studies about executives who had gone too far and destroyed lives in the process. This felt like going too far. But he also remembered the image that would not leave his mind, no matter how hard he tried to shake it. Emily hunched in the storage room, eating alone in the dark, wrapping half her food for someone else. That image was stronger than his guilt. So he followed. The bus wound through downtown for 20 minutes, stopping every few blocks to let passengers on and off. Lucas stayed 3 cars behind, watching through his windshield as the neighborhoods changed around him like a slow-motion documentary about inequality. The trendy cafes with their chalkboard menus disappeared first. Then the chain restaurants, with their bright signs and promises of value meals. Then the nice grocery stores, where people bought organic vegetables and artisan bread, replaced by pawn shops with iron bars on the windows. Liquor stores with faded signs, advertising cheap beer and lottery tickets. Apartment buildings that looked like they had not been painted since the 1980s, their facades crumbling, their windows dark or flickering with the blue light of old televisions. The street lights became sporadic, and some blocks had no lights at all, just darkness and shadows and the occasional figure moving through the night, like a ghost. 40 minutes after leaving the restaurant, the bus groaned to a stop in front of a crumbling apartment complex. Lucas parked half a block away, turned off his headlights, and watched. Emily got off the bus carrying a plastic bag, not the grocery bag from the storage room, but something smaller, lighter. Probably food she had bought with her own money, her 20% employee discount, her hard-earned wages spent on whatever scraps she could afford. She walked quickly toward the building, shoulders hunched against the November cold, head down, feet moving fast. She walked like someone who knew this neighborhood was not safe after dark, like someone who had learned that lesson the hard way. The apartment complex was 3 stories tall, concrete and brick, with water stains running down the walls like the building itself was weeping. The paint was peeling in long strips. The railings on the exterior stairs were rusted, some of them missing entirely. Half the windows were dark, covered with cardboard or newspaper. The other half glowed with the pale, sickly light of old televisions. Somewhere inside, a baby was crying, the sound thin and desperate in the cold night air. Emily climbed the exterior stairs to the 3rd floor, her footsteps echoing on the metal steps. She stopped at apartment 3C, fished her keys from her pocket, and put the key in the lock. Before she could turn it, the door flew open from inside. 2 children burst out like they had been waiting by the door for hours. A girl, maybe 9 years old, with braids in her hair that were coming undone and a pink sweater that was too thin for the November cold, the kind of sweater that had been washed so many times it had lost its shape. A boy, maybe 7, smaller and skinnier, all elbows and knees, bouncing on his feet like he could not contain his energy despite the late hour. They threw their arms around Emily's waist and nearly knocked her backward. Even from half a block away, Lucas could hear their voices, high and excited and desperate. "Emily, Emily, did you bring food? We are so hungry." Mrs. Chen only had crackers today, and Lily ate most of them because she said her stomach hurt. Emily's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The exhausted, closed-off waitress, who moved through the restaurant like a ghost, disappeared completely, replaced by someone warm and alive, someone whose whole face transformed when she smiled. She laughed, really laughed, the first genuine laugh Lucas had ever heard from her. She hugged them both at the same time, kissed the top of the girl's head, ruffled the boy's hair with fingers that were probably still cold from the bus ride. "Come inside," she said, her voice gentle and firm at the same time. "It is freezing out here. Let me see what we have tonight." She herded them back through the door, and for a moment before it closed, Lucas caught a glimpse of the apartment inside. What he saw made his chest tighten. Bare walls painted an institutional beige that had yellowed with age and neglect. A sagging couch with cushions that had lost their shape, the fabric worn thin in places, probably rescued from a curb somewhere or inherited from someone who had died. A card table with 3 mismatched chairs, one of them held together with duct tape. The television was an old box model, the kind with a curved screen, the kind that people threw away 10 years ago when flat screens became affordable. It sat on a plastic milk crate because there was no television stand, no decorations, no photos on the walls, no curtains on the windows, just old bedsheets tacked up with thumbtacks. No signs of comfort or luxury of any kind, just the bare essentials of survival, and barely even that. The children's winter coats hung by the door, and even from this distance, Lucas could see they were too small. The boy's coat sleeves ended inches above his wrists. The girl's coat was missing buttons, held closed with safety pins. Emily moved to the card table, opened the plastic bag, and started pulling out food. The children gathered around her like she was performing a magic trick, their eyes wide, their small hands reaching. Lucas watched her divide everything with the precision of someone who had done this calculation 1,000 times before. The boy got half a sandwich, wrapped in wax paper from the deli counter. A small bag of chips, the kind that cost 99 cents at the gas station. Half an apple, already browning at the edges where she had cut it earlier. The girl got the same portions exactly. Equal, measured, fair. Emily took nothing for herself. She sat at the table with them, watching them eat, asking about their days. The boy talked about school, something about a science project he was supposed to do, but he did not have the supplies, and the teacher had given him a bad grade. He tried to sound like he did not care, but his voice wobbled at the edges. The girl mentioned a friend named Maria who had shared her lunch again, and she said it casually, like it was normal, like depending on the charity of classmates for food was just part of her life now. Emily listened to every word like their stories were the most important things in the world. She did not interrupt, she did not check her phone. She did not look tired, even though Lucas knew she must be exhausted. She was present in a way that only people who have almost lost everything know how to be present. When the boy finished his food in 4 bites, still hungry, still looking at the empty table, Emily quietly pushed her own portion toward him. She said something Lucas could not hear, something that made the boy hesitate, and the girl look up with worried eyes. But Emily smiled, and nodded, and the boy ate what she had given him, too hungry to argue, too young to understand what it cost her. An elderly woman appeared in the doorway of the neighboring apartment. Asian, probably Chinese, wearing a faded bathrobe and house slippers that had seen better decades. Her gray hair was pulled back in a bun, and her face was lined with the kind of wrinkles that came from a lifetime of hard work and harder choices. She said something to Emily in a mix of English and what might have been Cantonese. Emily turned, smiled, and nodded gratefully. The woman shuffled forward with a small paper bag, more groceries. Rice, probably. Some vegetables that were slightly wilted, the kind the grocery stores threw away but that still had a few days of life in them. The kind of simple food that stretched further than anything else. She handed the bag to Emily, and Emily bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect, of genuine appreciation, of two people who understood each other's struggles without needing words. This was community support, the kind that happens when official systems fail. When government programs have too many requirements and not enough funding, when food banks run out by the middle of the month, when churches close their pantries because donations have dried up, when the only safety net is the people who live next door, people who are barely surviving themselves, but still find something to give. Lucas understood something then, sitting in his car in the dark, watching this scene unfold through a window lit by a television older than the children watching it. Emily was not alone in her struggle. This whole building was struggling, this whole neighborhood, maybe this whole city. A hidden world of poverty and desperation that existed just 40 minutes from the gleaming restaurants and corporate offices where Lucas had spent his entire life. He watched the apartment window for a long time, watched the pale glow of that old television, watched the shadows moving behind the thin curtains. Emily helping with homework at the card table. The children getting ready for bed, probably sharing a mattress on the floor because there were no separate bedrooms. Emily tucking them in, reading them a story, maybe, or just sitting with them while they fell asleep, being present in the way that exhausted people somehow found the strength to be. Everything made sense now. The secrecy. Emily could not tell anyone at work about her situation, could not ask for help, could not show weakness, because weakness got you fired. Weakness got you labeled as a problem employee. Weakness got you replaced by someone more desperate, someone who would complain less, someone who would not remind the managers that their policies had human costs. The exhaustion. She worked 50 hours a week at the restaurant, then came home to 2 children who needed feeding, needed homework help, needed love and attention, and all the things that parents were supposed to provide. But Emily was not their parent. She was their sister.
24 years old, raising 2 orphans alone, with no time to rest, no space to breathe, no help except the kindness of elderly neighbors who had almost nothing themselves.
The leftover food. The math did not work. Lucas did it in his head, really did it for the first time, and the numbers were devastating. $14 an hour. 50 hours a week. That was $700 before taxes. After taxes, maybe $550. Rent for even this terrible apartment in this dangerous neighborhood was probably $350 a month. Utilities, another $75. Bus fare to get to work, $60 a month. School supplies, clothes for 2 growing children, medicine when they got sick. There was nothing left. Nothing for food, nothing for emergencies, nothing for the 1,000 small expenses that made up a life. So Emily took leftovers from the trash, food that the restaurant was throwing away anyway, food that would have ended up in a dumpster, rotting in a landfill somewhere, while 2 children went hungry in an apartment 40 minutes away. She took it home, divided it carefully, fed her siblings first, and kept them alive for 1 more day. And tomorrow she would do it again, and the day after that, because there was no other choice. There had never been another choice. Lucas thought about his own childhood. The dinners at 5-star restaurants where his father knew the owner by name, the birthday parties with catered food and professional entertainment and more presents than any child could ever use. The family vacations to places he barely remembered because there had been so many, they all blurred together into a haze of luxury and privilege. He thought about all the meals he had wasted without a second thought, the plates of food scraped into the garbage because he was not hungry anymore. The buffet tables at corporate events where more got thrown away than eaten. The leftovers in his refrigerator right now, expensive takeout containers that would probably go bad before he remembered they existed. He had never known what hunger meant. Not really. Not the kind of hunger that made children run to the door when their sister came home, hoping she had brought something to eat. Not the kind of hunger that made a young woman eat alone in a dark storage room, saving half her meal for someone else. Not until tonight. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his father, update on branch 19. Lucas stared at the message for a long time. Then he looked back at the apartment window, where the light had finally gone out. Emily was probably lying awake in the dark right now, too tired to sleep, calculating how many days until payday, how many meals she could stretch from Mrs. Chen's rice and vegetables, how many hours she could work tomorrow before she collapsed. For the first time in his life, Lucas did not know what to tell his father, because the problem with Branch 19 was not lazy workers. It was not corrupt managers, it was not theft or inefficiency or any of the simple problems that could be solved with new cameras and stricter policies. It was a system that paid people $14 an hour and called it fair. A system that cut staff meals to save money and called it efficiency. A system that would fire a woman for feeding her orphaned siblings with food that was going in the trash anyway and call it policy. And Lucas was part of that system. He owned it. His name was on the building, on the paychecks, on the policies that had pushed Emily into that storage room night after night. His family's decisions had created this situation, had created thousands of situations just like it, across 180 restaurants in cities he had never visited and neighborhoods he had never seen. He sat in his car in the dark for a long time, watching the apartment building, watching the night settle in around him. And he knew that by tomorrow he would have to decide what kind of person he wanted to be. Monday morning brought a new face to Branch 19, and Lucas noticed him immediately. A man in his 50s, tall and thin, wearing a tailored vest over a crisp white shirt. No name tag, no apron, no indication that he had ever worked a real job in his life. He stood in the corner of the kitchen during the morning prep, watching everything, taking notes on a tablet. His eyes moved constantly, scanning, evaluating, judging. Lucas felt the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. "Who is that?" he asked Kenny quietly. Kenny's face went pale. "That is Marcus Vane, Regional Compliance Director." He swallowed hard. "They call him the closer. He gets sent to locations that have problems, and he does not leave until the problems are gone." "What kind of problems?" Kenny gave him a look. "Any kind. Theft, low performance, union organizing, whatever corporate wants eliminated." He glanced at Marcus, then back at Lucas. 3 years ago he shut down a location in Ohio, fired half the staff in 1 day, no severance, no warning, just gone. Lucas watched Marcus scan the room, His eyes were cold and calculating. The eyes of someone who saw people as numbers on a spreadsheet. When his gaze landed on Emily, it lingered, just for a moment, long enough to notice. Over the next 2 days, Marcus Vane systematically dismantled whatever trust remained at Branch 19. He called employees into Mark's office one by one, closed-door conversations that lasted 15 to 20 minutes each. When they emerged, they were different. Quieter, more careful. They would not look at each other. Lucas got called in on Tuesday afternoon. Marcus sat behind Mark's desk like he owned it. Mark stood in the corner, reduced to a spectator in his own office. "Lucas, is it?" Marcus asked without looking up from his tablet. "Yes, sir. Hired 3 weeks ago, dishwasher. Night shift." He looked up. "Tell me, have you noticed anything unusual since you started working here?" Lucas kept his face neutral. "Unusual how?" "Food going missing. Employees staying late without authorization, anyone acting suspiciously." The word hung in the air, suspiciously. "No, sir," Lucas said. "Nothing like that." Marcus studied him for a long moment, his eyes like ice, cold and sharp and searching. "Very well, if you notice anything, report it to me directly. Not to Mark. To me." He handed Lucas a business card. "This is my personal number. Use it if you have information." Lucas took the card. "Yes, sir." He left the office feeling like he needed a shower. The fear spread through the restaurant like a virus. Conversations in the break room dried up. People who had been friendly for years started avoiding each other. Everyone was afraid of saying the wrong thing, of being overheard, of becoming the next target. Lucas watched it happen, and understood what Marcus was doing. He was not just looking for a thief. He was creating an environment where people would turn on each other, where the guilty would reveal themselves through fear, where the innocent would suffer alongside them. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. On Wednesday, one of the busboys got called into the office. Derek, a kid barely 19 years old who had worked at the restaurant for 8 months, good employee, never complained, always showed up on time. He came out 20 minutes later with his face red and his eyes wet. "What happened?" Lucas asked him quietly in the dish pit. "They said I took a bread roll." Derek whispered. "Back in August, I do not even remember it, but they had footage." His voice cracked. "They said it was a warning. This time, but if anything else happens, I am gone." A bread roll. 3 months ago, Marcus was building cases against everyone, creating an atmosphere of terror, making examples out of small infractions to keep everyone in line. Emily came back to work on Wednesday, and she looked worse than Lucas had ever seen her. Shadows under her eyes so dark, they looked like bruises. Movement slower than usual. Hands trembling slightly when she carried the coffee pot. She had not been taking food from the storage room. Lucas knew because he had been watching the security feeds. Every night, the storage room stayed empty. The leftover food sat untouched. And Emily was starving herself to stay out of trouble. During her shift, she dropped a tray of drinks. The glasses shattered across the floor, water and soda splashed everywhere, and ice cubes skittered under tables like fleeing insects. Emily stood frozen, staring at the mess like it was the end of the world. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I will pay for them. I am so sorry." Her voice was barely audible. Lucas moved to help her clean up. Up close, he could see her hands shaking, could see how pale her skin was, could see the way her uniform hung looser than it had a week ago. She was not just hungry, she was malnourished. Marcus Vane happened to be standing near the kitchen door, watching. He did not yell. He did not scold. He simply looked at his tablet and said, "Note another operational error. Time stamp it," then walked away, like Emily was not a person at all, just another number to track. That evening, Lucas found Emily in the break room during her 15-minute dinner break. She was sitting at the small table, drinking water. Just water, no food, nothing. He sat down across from her. "Emily, can we talk?" She stiffened. "I am working." "I know, he lowered his voice. "I know something is wrong. I have seen you skip meals. I have seen you give up your breaks. I know you are struggling." Emily looked up. Her eyes were tired, but something else burned underneath. Anger, real anger, the kind that had been building for years. "You know nothing," she said quietly. You think you understand because you watched me for a few days. You think that makes us friends. I am trying to help. Then stop. She leaned forward. I called the employee assistance line. Twice. You know what they told me. Her voice was bitter now. They said I make too much money to qualify for help, but not enough to actually live on. They suggested I get a second job. She laughed, but it was not a real laugh. It was the sound of someone who had been broken too many times. I work 50 hours a week here. I raised 2 kids who lost their parents 3 years ago. I calculate every meal. I count every penny. I decide every single day which bills to pay and which ones to let slide. Lucas did not speak, could not speak, so no, Emily said. I do not need your help, because help does not exist. Not for people like me. She stood up, her water still untouched on the table. The system was not designed to help us. It was designed to keep us quiet until we disappear. She walked away, leaving Lucas sitting alone in the break room, understanding for the first time that the problem was not a person. It was the system itself. Friday morning, the day Lucas had been dreading. He arrived at the restaurant at 9:45, 15 minutes before the emergency staff meeting that Mark had announced the night before. The parking lot was already full. Every employee scheduled to work that day was already inside, plus a few who were not scheduled. Word had spread. Something was happening. Lucas walked through the front door. The dining room was empty, chairs still up on the tables from the night before, the smell of cleaning chemicals hanging in the air. Everyone was in the break room. He could hear the nervous murmurs from across the restaurant. The break room was packed. 23 employees crammed into a space designed for 10. Mark stood at the front behind a small table, his laptop open in front of him. Marcus Vane stood beside him, his expression neutral, but there was something in his eyes. Satisfaction. The look of a hunter who had finally cornered his prey. Lucas scanned the room and found Emily in the back corner. Her face was pale, her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, and she was staring at the floor. She knew. Of course she knew. This meeting was about her. All right, Mark said. Let us get started. The room went silent. I am going to show you something, and I want to be very clear. This is not personal, this is policy. He turned the laptop screen toward the room. Security footage played. Black and white, time-stamped from 6 days ago. Before the new cameras. The old system's final recording. It showed Emily in the storage room, sitting on the overturned milk crate, eating a burger, packing food into her grocery bag. The room was completely silent. Nobody breathed. This footage was archived from our old system, Mark said. I reviewed it yesterday as part of the transition to the new cameras. What you are seeing is theft. Clear and documented. Lucas felt his heart pounding in his chest. He looked at Emily. She sat perfectly still, her face drained of all color. Like someone watching their own execution. Marcus Vane stepped forward. Miss Torres, he said. His voice smooth and cold. Do you have anything to say? Emily opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because this is a terminable offense, Marcus continued. You understand that, correct? Emily's voice was barely audible. I can explain. Explain what? Marcus's voice did not change, but there was something cruel underneath. Explain stealing food for months. Years perhaps. He gestured at the frozen image on the screen. This is exactly why we have policies. To protect the company from exactly this kind of behavior. Those are leftovers, Emily said, her voice stronger now. Food that was going to be thrown away. That is not your decision to make, Marcus replied calmly. Company property is company property until it is in the dumpster, so it is better to throw away food than let someone eat it. It is not about better or worse, it is about following rules. The other employees shifted uncomfortably. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked away. One of the waitresses whispered something to the person next to her, and they both smirked. I have 2 siblings. Emily stood up. The room went completely still. Her voice trembled, but it did not break. They are 7 and 9 years old. Our parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. She looked around the room at the faces of people she had worked with for 2 years. People who had never asked about her life, never wondered why she worked so hard, never cared enough to see. I am all they have, her chin lifted.
I work 50 hours a week here, and still cannot afford enough food after rent and bills. She took a breath. So yes, I took leftovers, food that was going in the trash anyway. Her eyes met Marcus's. I am not sorry for feeding my family. The room was silent. Mark's expression softened, just for a moment, a flicker of something human behind the corporate mask. Then it hardened again. I am sorry for your situation, he said. But I cannot make exceptions. As of now, you are suspended pending a full investigation. Corporate will make the final decision. Marcus nodded. Policy must be maintained, for the good of the entire organization. He turned to address the room. Let this be a lesson. No matter what your circumstances, no matter what your reasons, theft is theft, and it will not be tolerated. He straightened his vest. This meeting is stop. Everyone turned. Lucas stepped forward, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. 23 pairs of eyes on him. The dishwasher, the new guy. Nobody important. Stop, he said again. Louder this time. Mark frowned. Lucas, this does not concern you. Get back to. My name is not just Lucas. He pulled off his dishwasher apron and dropped it on the floor. It landed with a soft thump that somehow silenced the entire room. It is Lucas Hale. Victor Hale is my father. I own this restaurant. He looked at Marcus. Actually, I own all of them. The room erupted. What? No way. Are you serious? Mark's face went through 3 colors in about 5 seconds. Confused. Pale. Red. You are Victor's son. I have been undercover for 2 weeks, evaluating this branch. Lucas said. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. And you know what I found? He turned to face the room. Not lazy workers, not theft rings, not corrupt managers. He pointed at the frozen image of Emily on the screen. I found a company that abandoned its people. He looked at Mark. 6 months ago, corporate cut the staff meal program to save money. That decision, my father's decision, put employees in impossible positions. He turned to Marcus. You want to know why this branch is failing? It is not because of the workers, it is because of policies made by people who have never missed a meal in their lives. Marcus Vane's expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Recalculation. Company policy is company policy, he said smoothly. I do not make the rules, I enforce them. Then let us call someone who does. Lucas pulled out his phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. The room was dead silent. 1 ring. 2 rings. Lucas. His father's voice came through, sharp and businesslike. I am in a meeting with the board. Put me on speaker. This is important. A pause. A sigh. All right. You are on speaker. What is this about? Lucas looked at Emily. She was staring at him with wide eyes. Disbelief, hope, fear, all mixed together. Dad. I am standing in front of a 24-year-old waitress who is being fired for taking leftover food that was headed for the trash. He took a breath. Food she used to feed her 2 orphan siblings. After you cut the staff meal program. Silence on the other end. 10 seconds. 20. Then what is the employee's name? Emily Torres. Mark replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Miss Torres. Victor Hale's voice came through the phone. Formal and measured. Is what my son said accurate? You have been taking discarded food to feed your siblings. Emily looked at Lucas, then at the phone, then back at Lucas. Yes, sir. And how long has this been happening? 6 months, her voice cracked. Since the meal program ended. Why did you not report your situation to HR? We have hardship programs. I did. Emily's voice suddenly had an edge. The anger she had shown Lucas in the break room finally coming out. I called the employee assistance line. Twice. They said I made too much money to qualify for help, but not enough to actually live on. She took a shaky breath. They suggested I apply for a second job. Lucas watched the room, watched the other employees process what they were hearing. Some looked guilty, some looked angry, some just looked tired. Like they had known all along that the system was broken but had given up fighting it. Dad, Lucas said quietly, she works 50 hours a week for us. She shows up early, stays late, never complains. She gave up her breaks to help other employees. He looked at Marcus, and we were going to fire her for eating garbage. It was not garbage, Marcus said quickly. It was company property. It was food we were throwing away. Lucas snapped. Do not hide behind policy when we both know it is indefensible. The phone crackled. Lucas could hear muffled voices in the background. The board members conferring. Finally, his father spoke. Miss Torres, you are not fired. You are not even suspended. Emily's hand went to her mouth. Mark, I want you to drop this matter immediately. Mark nodded frantically, even though Victor could not see him. Yes, sir. Marcus Vane's jaw tightened. Mr. Hale, with respect, if we make exceptions for one employee, we set a dangerous precedent. Mr. Vane, Victor's voice was ice. You are no longer needed at Branch 19. Report to regional headquarters tomorrow morning for reassignment. Marcus's face went pale. But sir, tomorrow morning, Mr. Vane. This conversation is over. Lucas, stay on the line. Everyone else, you are dismissed. Get back to work. The employees filed out slowly, shell-shocked. Emily lingered near the door, looking at Lucas with an expression he could not read. Gratitude. Confusion. Something else. Something complicated. Thank you, she mouthed silently. Then she was gone. Marcus Vane walked past Lucas without a word, but he stopped at the door, turned, and said, "This is not over." Then he was gone too. Lucas stood alone in the break room, his phone still connected. Take me off speaker. A click. Done. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking that we were about to fire a woman for trying to keep her family alive. Silence. Come home, Victor finally said. We need to have a serious conversation about your future with this company. The line went dead. Lucas stood there for a long moment, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, or the first right decision. The meeting ended without applause, without apology, without any sense of resolution. Just 23 people walking back to their stations, picking up where they left off, pretending that everything was normal. But nothing was normal anymore. Lucas could feel it in the air. The whispers started before Emily even left the building. She is the reason the owner's son was here. She made everything complicated. Some people just bring trouble wherever they go. Lucas heard them, and understood something his business school professors never taught him. Saving one person does not save the environment around them. Sometimes it makes things worse. Marcus Vane left the building that afternoon. He was not fired, just reassigned, removed from the situation. The language of the corporate world, where people were never terminated but transitioned, where departments were never shut down but restructured, where human beings were never hurt but impacted. Marcus would land somewhere else, some other branch, some other struggling restaurant. He would do the same thing there that he had done here because that was his job, and the system rewarded him for it. Emily was told she could keep her position, but everyone knew she could not stay at Branch 19. Not after this. The other employees would not let her. The subtle cruelties had already started. Someone moved her coat from the break room to the trash. Someone scheduled her for the worst shifts, every day, without exception. Someone started a rumor that she had been sleeping with the owner's son. That was why he protected her. That was why she got special treatment. That was the only explanation that made sense to people who could not imagine genuine compassion. Lucas watched it happen, and realized he had won the battle but damaged the person he was trying to protect. On Saturday, Emily found Lucas in the parking lot after her shift. She looked exhausted, more than usual. You should not have done that, she said quietly. I could not watch them fire you. She shook her head. You do not understand, now I am the problem. The exception. The girl who got special treatment. She looked at the building behind them. I have worked here 2 years, built relationships, earned respect in my own way, and now all of that is gone. Her voice was not angry, just tired, so tired. I was trying to help, Lucas said. I know, and maybe you did, but help always comes with a cost. She started walking toward the bus stop, then paused and looked back. What happens to me now? Lucas did not have an answer, not yet, but he was going to find one. The headquarters of Hale's Kitchen Group occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. Glass and steel, marble floors, the kind of building that whispered power and money with every step you took. Lucas had grown up in these halls, attending board meetings instead of Little League games, learning profit margins before he learned long division. Now walking through the glass doors, he felt like a stranger, like he had finally seen the truth behind the facade, and could not unsee it. The executive conference room was on the 40th floor, all windows. A view of the city that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. 12 executives sat around the marble table, and his father sat at the head, expression unreadable. The defendant's chair was at the opposite end, waiting for Lucas. He sat down. "Let us address the elephant in the room," Patricia Chen said immediately. The CFO, sharp, skeptical, the one most likely to oppose anything that cost money. "You have been undercover for 2 weeks, and you just exposed yourself to save one employee." One. She leaned forward. "Do you understand how that looks?" "It looks like I have a conscience," Lucas replied. "It looks like you are incapable of making objective business decisions. Operational efficiency was supposed to be your focus, not employee relations, not social work. Efficiency." Lucas took a breath. "Stay calm. Use their language. Branch 19 is failing because employee morale is destroyed. And employee morale is destroyed because we cut programs that people depended on. We cut those programs to stay competitive," Patricia said. "Industry standard. Everyone does it." Industry standard created this problem. "Lucas," his father's voice cut through. "Lower your voice. This is a professional meeting." Lucas forced himself to breathe. "Emily Torres works 50 hours a week for us. She raises 2 orphan siblings on $14 an hour. After rent and utilities and transportation, she has maybe $50 a week for food." He looked around the table. "For 3 people. Do the math. It does not work." "Then she should find a better job," Patricia said. "That is not our responsibility."
She has 2 years of experience with us. Reliable, hard-working, respected by customers. If we are not paying her enough to live, what does that say about us? "It says we are running a business," Marcus Webb replied. "Not a charity. It says we are failing at both." Lucas stood up. "Because Branch 19 has the highest turnover rate in the company, 140% annually. That means we replace the entire staff every 8 months. He pulled up data on his phone. Training new employees costs money. Lost productivity costs money. Customer complaints about inconsistent service cost money. He looked at Patricia. "Our cost-cutting measures are actually costing us more than they save." That got her attention. She started typing on her tablet. Victor cleared his throat. "Lucas, I appreciate your passion, but passion does not run a company. Data does. Policy does." He steepled his fingers. "If we make exceptions for one employee, we set a precedent. Where does it end? It ends with treating people like humans instead of line items." "Idealistic," Patricia muttered. "Maybe." Lucas looked around the table. "But here is something practical. Bad press. Social media. One story about us firing a woman for feeding her orphan siblings with our trash." He paused. "That goes viral in an hour. 30 years of reputation. Destroyed in a day." He met his father's eyes. "You want to talk about cost? Calculate that." The room went quiet. Several board members exchanged glances. Victor studied his son for a long moment. "So, what do you propose?" "Reinstate the staff meal program, all locations, and create a real employee hardship fund, not one that rejects people for making too much money while they are literally starving." "Do you know what that would cost?" Patricia asked. "Less than the lawsuits when someone faints from malnutrition. Less than the PR nightmare when this story gets out." Lucas paused. "And significantly less than our annual executive bonus pool." That last line landed hard. Marcus Webb's face reddened. Patricia's jaw tightened. "But Victor," his father almost smiled. "You have thought about this." "I have had a long 2 weeks." Victor stood. "Everyone out. I need to speak with my son alone." The board members filed out. Father and son sat alone in the vast conference room. Do you know what you have done? Victor asked. I saved someone's job. You undermined months of strategy, exposed corporate surveillance, made your manager look incompetent. Victor stood and walked to the window. You also forced my hand in front of the entire board. Would you have preferred I let her get fired? I would have preferred you trusted the system. The system was broken. Systems are supposed to be broken. Victor turned to face him. That is how we find the flaws. But you fix them from inside, through proper channels, not by blowing everything up. Proper channels would have taken weeks. Emily did not have weeks, and that is the problem. Victor's voice hardened. You made an emotional decision. In business, emotion gets people hurt worse than policy ever could. He sat across from Lucas. You think you saved Emily. You painted a target on her back. Every employee knows she is the reason you exposed yourself. The words hit Lucas like cold water. He had not thought about that. He started. You acted with your heart instead of your head. Victor shook his head. Noble, but naive. He pulled out his tablet. But you were not entirely wrong. The admission shocked Lucas. I had the data pulled. Victor continued. Branch 19's turnover is the highest in the company. Training costs are up 70%. Customer satisfaction is down. He paused. And Emily Torres has perfect attendance. 0 complaints, multiple commendations. So I was right. About the symptoms. Yes. About the solution. That is more complicated. Victor slid a folder across the table. You have 4 weeks. Design a sustainable employee support program. Budget it. Staff it. Create metrics. Present it to the board. If they approve, you implement it. If they do not, then you learn that being right is not enough. Lucas took the folder. And Emily, transfer her to headquarters. Somewhere she can use her experience without the backlash. She is qualified. She managed 2 children and a full-time job for 3 years. She is overqualified. Victor extended his hand. Do not make me regret this. Lucas shook it. I will not. 3 weeks later, Emily sat at a desk on the 23rd floor of corporate headquarters. Employee Relations Department. Her own phone, her own computer, her own nameplate. Emily Torres, Employee Support Specialist. It still did not feel real. The phone rang. Hale's Kitchen Employee Support Line. This is Emily. How can I help you? A trembling voice on the other end. I do not know if I am calling the right place, but my manager said there might be help. I am behind on my rent, and I have been picking up extra shifts, but it is not enough, and I do not know what to do. Emily closed her eyes. She knew that voice, not the specific person, but the fear, the desperation, the shame of having to ask for help. She had been that voice. 3 months ago, 6 months ago, her whole life. You are calling the right place, she said gently. Can you tell me your name? Over the next hour, Emily walked the caller through the new hardship fund application, explained the process, answered questions, listened when the woman started crying. I thought I was going to lose my apartment. The woman said, I thought I was going to have to choose between food and rent. Again, you are not going to lose your apartment. Emily said, we are going to figure this out together. When the call ended, Emily sat back in her chair, breathing, processing. This was her job now, helping people who were falling through the cracks, the same cracks she had fallen through, the same cracks that had almost swallowed her whole. Lucas appeared in her doorway. How is the first week going? Emily looked up. Busy. We have had 47 calls since Monday. 47. She nodded. People are scared to ask for help. They think it is a trap, that they will get fired for admitting they are struggling. She paused. But word is spreading, that this time the help is real. Lucas sat down across from her. I owe you an apology. For what? For making things harder before I made them better. For not thinking about what would happen to you after I exposed myself. Emily was quiet for a moment. You could not have known. I should have thought about it. Maybe. She looked at him. But you did something. Most people do nothing. They see the problem and they look away. You did not look away. Lucas did not know what to say. My brother wrote a report about you, Emily said. For school. About heroes. Heroes. She smiled. He is 7. Everything is heroes and villains at that age. She paused. He said you proved that businesses can care about people, not just money. She looked at Lucas. When he grows up he wants to make the world better, like you did. Lucas felt something tighten in his chest. I did not do that much. You did enough. Emily turned back to her computer. Now let me do the rest. At Branch 19 things were changing too. The meal program had been reinstated, not with fanfare or press releases, just quietly. A sign in the break room, free meals for employees during shifts, that was it. Kenny noticed it first. Wait, we can actually eat here now, for free. Apparently, one of the other cooks said. New policy from corporate. What changed? Nobody knew exactly, but they did not question it, they just ate. For the first time in 6 months they ate without counting pennies. Was it trait? For first time in 6 months they ate without counting pennies, without guilt, without shame. The atmosphere shifted, not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly, steadily. People started talking to each other again, started helping each other again, started believing that maybe, just maybe, the company actually cared about them. 6 months after the Branch 19 incident, Lucas visited the restaurant unannounced, not undercover this time. Everyone knew who he was now. They greeted him warmly without fear or suspicion. He found Kenny in the kitchen, training a new hire. Hey boss, come to spy on us again. Just checking in. How is everything? Honestly, best it has been in years. We are actually staffed properly now. People want to work here. He shook his head. Weird, right? In the dining room families ate together. A mother fed her toddler while her elderly father laughed at something on his phone. A teenage couple shared fries, oblivious to the world. Regular people, living regular lives, in a place that finally treated them with dignity. Lucas's phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Carlos wrote another report about you. For school, about heroes. She attached a photo, a piece of lined paper, careful handwriting, a child's words. My hero is Lucas Hale because he proved that businesses can care about people, not just money. When I grow up I want to make the world better like he did. Below that Emily had added, no pressure or anything, with a smiley face. Lucas smiled and looked around the restaurant. The warm booths, the flickering light above table 9, the smell of coffee and hope. He had come here to learn about business. Instead he had learned about people, and that made all the difference. The break room at Branch 19 looked the same as it always had. Same old microwave, same wobbly table, same coffee maker that took too long. But nobody ate alone anymore. Nobody hid in the storage room. Nobody counted their pennies wondering if they could afford lunch. Lucas walked through the kitchen one last time before leaving. He overheard a conversation between two servers. Remember when we used to fight over the leftover rolls? God, yes. I do not miss those days. Yeah. A pause. At least now they do not let us go hungry. Lucas stopped. That was it. That was everything. At least now they do not let us go hungry. Not a grand statement, not a corporate slogan, just a simple truth. A business does not fail because it gives too much. It fails when it forgets what people need to survive. If this story touched your heart, I want you to do something. Look around your life, at work, at home, in your community. There are Emilys everywhere, people working hard, playing by the rules, and still falling through the cracks. You do not have to be a business owner to help them. Sometimes all it takes is seeing someone, really seeing them, and refusing to look away. That is how change starts. One person at a time, one meal at a time, one moment of dignity at a time. Thank you for watching. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to this channel and hit that bell, because kindness is not just a feeling, it is a choice, and every choice matters.